Well, folks, if I were a Michigan Democrat right now, I would not be feeling too great. Longtime Senator Gary Peters recently announced about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that he would not be running for re-election in the 2026 midterms, sending shockwaves through Democrat circles in Congress. Now, this is going to open up a very highly contested primary for the Democrats to be the Democrat nominee in that seat, which leaves an even more contested general election against Republicans, with Democrats only winning the Senate election in 2024 by less than 20,000 votes. But things just keep getting worse for the Democrats. Now, before we get into this, if you're new here, drop down below, hit that subscription button, hit that notification bell, make sure you never miss another video from us again. Now, according to a recent poll, Mike Rogers, who ran for the Senate 2024, lost by about 19,000 votes, is now leading potential Democrat contender Pete Buttigieg. Now, we're 2 years out, take it with a grain of salt, obviously. But we're obviously seeing right now, out of these voters, where are people at? There's a lot of unknowns here. Obviously, we have 12% that's undecided in this race here, but still up 6 points on Pete Buttigieg, the former, he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and then somehow became the transportation secretary under the Biden administration because he supposedly likes choo-choo trains or something like that. But, of course, we know it's early. We don't even know if Pete Buttigieg is going to officially throw his hat in the ring at this point. But these numbers are definitely raising some eyebrows and are definitely going to make Democrats really consider who are they going to run in this election. This is going to be a highly contested election. Candidate quality is going to matter. And in the Midwest, carpetbaggers like this, because obviously he has resettled to Michigan, but he's initially from Indiana. People in the Midwest don't particularly like that, but we're going to see how it all plays out. I think it's going to put some emphasis on Democratic leadership to, throw their hat behind someone in the primary who they believe is going to be the best for the general election, not just who's going to get the most Democratic support in the primary. They need to look beyond that. Now, it's shaping up in this primary to potentially be a pretty fierce battle with Democrats. Obviously Pete Buttigieg has publicly expressed interest. So has Sarah Anthony, who is a state senator, Mallory McNarrow, who is a state senator, Haley Stevens, who is a representative from Michigan's 11th congressional district. She's definitely, Haley Stevens, I'd say, is the other person I would look at in this Democrat primary who's expressed interest. She's known for being a little bit more moderate, has a better appeal to suburban voters. But, however, the primary fight could leave the party really divided, with a lot of money and resources spent in the state just to defend a seat. It's like, this isn't even a seat they're looking to flip. This is just to defend a seat. They're having to put a lot of resources here before they could even put resources at a Republican challenger. Now, meanwhile, if I were a Republican, I'd be feeling a little bit more optimistic. Obviously, there is a lot of work to be done regardless of what happens. But if I were a Republican right now, I'd be feeling okay. Right now, the two that have publicly expressed interest, Tudor Dixon obviously ran in the 2022 gubernatorial election against Gretchen Whitmer and lost, and then Mike Rogers, who lost by about 19,000 votes in the 2024 Senate election, who was a former U.S. representative for about, I think he served 7 terms in Congress. Now, there have been a lot of other names that have been thrown out here. John James, he was the Senate nominee in 2020 who came pretty close to beating Gary Peters in 2020. He lost by, I believe, about 1.5 points in the state. So it definitely a very, very, very close election. But Mike Rogers is really gearing up for another run, and other prominent GOP figures are probably going to throw their hat in the name here, or their hat in the ring. Obviously, people like Ronna McDaniel. I think it would be terrible if she jumped in. I think she was a terrible chair of the RNC. I think she did a horrible job. I think she kind of represents more 20th century politics. You hate to say it, as a younger person, she is. But she just could not modernize the Republican Party the same way that people like Charlie Kirk and Laura Trump were able to modernize the Republican Party in the 2024 presidential election. Now, obviously, lots of names that are being thrown out here in the GOP, in a GOP primary, but I would feel good if I had to put money on it right now. Is either going to be Mike Rogers or John James, who's going to be leading the ticket. And as of right now, I think Mike Rogers has got the momentum on his side as of right now. But there's a lot of work ahead that lies for these people to make sure that we can flip this seat and follow through on the national senatorial committees. Really, they want to get to 55 seats in the Senate. Tim Scott laid out their plans. That's what they want. So this is going to be a big part of it. And this is going to ultimately shape up to be one of the most expensive Senate races in the country, with hundreds of millions of dollars expected to be flooded into Michigan from both sides. For Democrats, this is a seat they must defend at all costs to maintain the minority that they have, but at 47 votes. They must retain this seat. It's like, that power is going to slip away from them even further. Right now they can at least look at it and say, there is ultimately on a big chunk of Trump legislation and Trump nominees that he's submitted to the Senate to approve, you have some people who are going to break away. People like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell. You have three who most are defectors that could defect. And it could be a 50-50 Senate. Obviously, J.D. Vance is going to break that. You'd need a fourth one to defect in order for Democrats to have a majority on a piece of legislation. But ultimately, things don't look good for the Democrats there. And to maintain the 47 seats that they do have is going to be very, very difficult at this point. And like I said, the National Republican Senatorial Committee has outlined their game plan. It's targeting Georgia and Michigan to flip those states and to take a 55-seat majority. That's the goal. 55 to 45 Senate majority, expand the map, push through as much as they possibly can the final 2 years of President Trump's administration. Because obviously, as of right now, I'd say it's a safe bet that the Senate will be held by Republicans through the entire Trump administration. And I think there's a good shot that the House could be too. It's just going to depend on how quickly Trump's able to enact his domestic economic policies and how quickly can there be implications on the local level that we see that really are going to affect these people. So we're going to see what happens. But if you look back at the 2020 and the 20, I should say even like the 24 election, this was a close election here. Like I said, 19,000 votes is what separates these two people right here. Elisa Slotkin beat Mike Rogers out, ran ahead of Kamala Harris in the state. It's like it was, let's see if we can get, let's see, national results. Oh, she ran ahead of the president. She had 2.7. Oh, yeah, look at that. And Mike Rogers ran behind, Donald Trump. Some people, there was a big chunk of people, a little over 100,000 voters who voted for Trump who didn't vote for Mike Rogers in that election. Obviously Trump pulls people out to vote for him. Does that always show down ballot? Not necessarily. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people that do show, but obviously there wasn't enough to pull him over the edge at that point, because obviously this Senate map, just based on the states, looks a lot different. Obviously Trump won Arizona, Trump won Nevada, Trump won Wisconsin, Trump won Michigan. And they lost the Senate seat in all four. Not by much, except for in Arizona, where are we really surprised that we lost by, 2.5 points? It's like we nominated Carrie Lake. Like, give it a break. Just like, I'm just going to be 100% honest. Give it a break. You need to go out to pasture. Go away. We're gonna keep losing in Arizona if you keep running. So we know it was very highly contested in 24. Back in 2020, it was also very highly contested. Like I said, only losing the Senate seat by about 1.5 points here. lost to Gary Peters, John James, who is a Michigan congressman. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of shakeup in this race here. But Democrats have managed to scrape by the last two elections. They've managed, even when the margins are shrinking every election. This margin in a presidential election was over about 90,000 votes, shrunk down to, 19,000 votes. So the margins are getting tough for Democrats in Wisconsin. Can this be the election that we finally put the nail in the coffin and are able to flip it and the margins are in the GOP's favor? We'll see. It's going to be an uphill battle either way, but the wild card is going to be President Trump. It really is going to come down to how well is President Trump going to be able to navigate the next 2 years of his administration with his legislation, with public sentiment. Either could boost the GOP candidates down the ballot or give Democrats an opening to rally support from some more moderates who supported President Trump, who maybe aren't feeling that he's following through on what he said he's going to do. But ultimately, there was a CBS poll out that came out a couple days ago. 70% of Americans believe that President Trump, regardless if they support him or not, 70% believe that he's doing what he said he's going to do. But here's the bottom line, folks. Right now, Michigan Democrats are staring down a perfect storm. An open Senate seat, a potential bruising primary, and a confident and organized GOP. Let's just take a moment to recognize how organized the GOP is. The 2024 election was much more of a traditional, organized GOP campaign. You had someone like Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, running things, checking people's egos at the door, really keeping a tight lip, making sure things did not get leaked to the press. It was a very tight, well-run, well-oiled machine that put Trump in the White House in 2024. And a national landscape right now that could go either way. We need to double down on this well-oiled machine that the GOP has here. But they've got a lot of work to do for the Democrats if they want to keep the seat blue. And the GOP has a lot of work and a lot of money that needs to be spent if they want to flip the seat and get to their 55-seat majority. So if you're watching this as a Democrat, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride in 2026. But that's all for today. If you found our breakdown of this election really helpful to you, make sure to like this video down below, subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss another video from us. But we're going to be following this race very closely. We will keep you updated with any more updates that we get out of this race.